Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Sometimes refusing a gift from a guest can be bad manners. Try to explain this to Chief Compliance Officer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Delicious compliance. I used to be a suit for a large corporation and was in charge of a visitor center in the middle of nowhere, 1 hour away from the company headquarters. The visitor center was attached to a site where technology was prototyped or used for the first time, so many managers working in the same industry came by, had a tour, and maybe some meetings with other suits from HQ. One of my tasks was to create the work plans for the other 25 tour guides. These were mostly smart students in their early 20s doing this as a temp job 1 or 2 days a week. Most of them were trilingual, German, English, and one other, and our guests were in awe when someone could do the tour in their native language, like Russian, Hindi, Korean, or Norwegian. Work was not too hard if you like talking, pay was good, 20 euros an hour plus commuting expense, and the guests were pleasant professionals, other students, or people from our company. On a normal day, there were 7 to 10 guides, and each did 4 to 5 tours. In my culture, gifts are not a big deal. You get something on your birthday and on Christmas, maybe bring some flowers when you visit your mother, but that's usually it. Since we had many international guests, I quickly learned that in many countries, it seems to be normal to bring a really nice gift if you're a guest. So we trained all the guides to properly handle this and not to offend anyone. Since most of our tour guests were from abroad, every tour guide would take at least 1 or 2 gifts home daily, ranging from chocolate to electronic gadgets or booze. We usually shared everything among the guides, but if you did the tour, you had dibs if you really wanted that bottle of whiskey. The only unspoken rule was not to sell it. Some groups were so happy with the tour that they even sent a thank you package to one of the guides. So over the course of 2 years, we had many thousand groups and even had a space in our storage for the gifts that no one wanted. We called it the Kitsch Kist, tacky stuff box. Then the company effed up during the quarterly fiscal reports. The shareholders were angry, and so they did what every other Fortune 500 company does, bullcrap measures to get the board off your back. One of these measures were a program to ensure compliance. So someone was appointed CCO, Chief Compliance Officer, and in charge of making sure there's no bribery going on. A few weeks later, every single employee received 60 pages of legal gibberish explaining what compliance means and what to do and what not. I actually read that contract before signing because my tour guide temps would be spared to sign it if I took the responsibility. Unfortunately, it also said something like, gifts above estimated value of 20 euros cannot be accepted. If you cannot guess the value, they must also not be accepted. So I wrote to the compliance officer, told him about the visitor center, and explained that it would be very rude to refuse a little gift from a Japanese guest. I just did everything by the books and asked for a suggestion what to do. He called me and was pretty angry that we had accepted all these gifts over the years, but still had no clue that it can be offensive to refuse a gift. He said he will revise the compliance document and send me a new one. The new document said that all gifts of uncertain value or above 20 euros must be sent to the compliance officer. They will do a lottery and fairly give it to someone at HQ. I signed the new compliance guidelines and plotted my revenge. Of course, my team was sad that the daily gifts were not to be taken home anymore, but they also knew that the CCO would tightly monitor our behavior because we are a potential easy target. So we Germaned up and did everything in the formally most correct way. We ordered a few hundred boxes and package stamps, company expense, and started sending 20 to 30 boxes to the CCO's office, daily. We used the different tour guide names and addresses as senders, and also used the crap from the Kitsch Kist. After 3 weeks, I received another angry call from the CCO's assistant. He was abroad for the time with his boss and came back to a pile of boxes. I stated that it was exactly as he wanted it, and if he had a better idea, he should let me know. He suggested we should just store them somewhere and send them by bulk every month. 4 weeks later, we did just that and also added an inventory list of every single item. Then my boss did me a favor, went to the company intranet forums, and asked what will happen to all these gifts since the process seems very intransparent to him and that this is exactly the opposite of compliance. This produces so many replies that they felt pushed to make an official statement on the internet and actually held this effing tombola, which the CCO's office had to organize. This got the attention from the advisory board, and they asked the CCO if he had nothing better to do than organize gift lotteries. Half a year later, the guy was fired. We kept the gifts from this point on. Nobody ever asked again. The visitor center shut down in 2013 because the project ended. And our second story. Contractor procrastinates for profit, gets prison. This is something that happened to my grandfather. To understand him, he was a quality control engineer for a pretty major manufacturing firm, and he was a master of aggressively renegotiating deals. He was and is a strict taskmaster, not entitled or unreasonable, but if something went wrong, there would be hell to pay. So he decided that he wanted to renovate his home, take the moderately big 2-story house and add 2 new bedrooms and a master bath. He brings in a contractor and gets a quote, says as part of the work, they'll need to completely refinish the front too. Grandfather agrees, and they start work. It's a serious effort. Winds up carving open the whole front of the house and all sorts of madness. Things go well enough at first. The destruction goes smoothly. Then start construction. At first, things were just slow going. Sluggish delivery from sources, slow permits from the city. You get the idea. Then things get silly. It took them over 3 months to start and finish the plumbing, 4 months for the insulation. My grandfather is paying for a lot of time and not a lot of work done. He's irritated about the speed, but besides making some noise, there's not really much to be done about it. Bit by bit, the house starts to come together. Then as they're putting on the weatherproofing, an inspector comes in and puts a stop to the whole affair. The contractor had improperly filed the plans. Now my grandfather is pretty furious by this point, but he keeps a cool enough head, starts asking what's going to be done about it with the contractor. The thinking was that they redraft the plans and send them out for reapproval. Contractor says he'll do it. 5 months go by. The house is just sitting there, fancy new framework, still hanging in the breeze. Then all of a sudden, the contractor says he's pulling out. He has no idea the hell he'd unleashed. My grandfather didn't just jump straight to suing him. Oh no, sir. He took his time before even getting a lawyer. He did his homework. He tracked down every single client that this guy had for the last 3 years and did a deep dive on the books to figure out what the hell happened. Turns out that this wasn't an isolated incident, just the most egregious. As it happens, this contractor had a penchant for screwing people over, turning over minor reno jobs into complete dumpster fires. His modus operandi was to file the changes with the city, make a private second set of plans, start making things based on the second set, intentionally let the city halt the construction, then restart the project on a third draft. After talking to some of the other customers, he and 8 of the other victims collectively filed charges against him. They annihilated this guy. They took every cent he had, which wasn't that much. His scheme hadn't actually done him that much good, liquidated his company, sent him to something like 5 years in prison for fraud, and got the state to help recoup expenses. 2 months later, a new contracting company blitzed my grandfather's renovations, and he was able to drink in his master suite to toast his revenge. And our last story. Cost me $600. I'll cost you $1 million. 2004. I'm a few years out of college at my 3rd career posting at a radio station as a promotions director, managing promotions for 2 stations for the Beasley Broadcasting Company. Stable job, hard but decent work, nice but older crowd. It turns out the guy who hired me has a crush on a former station employee who left to work on the Jenny Jones show, then returned to us after that show got canceled. He asked me to take her on as an intern, knowing full well that made no sense as she'd logged more time in her past at the station than I had accrued myself. Sure enough, a few weeks later, I'm out the door, she's got my job, and they're dating. As a promotions director, I was responsible for all of the station's contests and the station's adherence to FCC rules on radio contests, which are strict AF. Google prize chance consideration in radio. Around the time of my firing, our station and everyone else was sucked in by the Trading Spaces TV show craze, so the station decided to bring in a bunch of local businesses and try to pull it off, offering free renovations to a pair of listeners. Except doing that by the rules would be a major pain in the butt, especially if the winners were actually selected by random. They could have major remediation work necessary prior to these fantasy renovations, insurance/liability issues due to unpermitted structures already on their property, etc. So the geniuses decided to cherry-pick a pair of winners that would be easiest to give renovations to. Bad idea. I advised them of this, as was my job, and was crap-canned the same week. My first move was to send a cute little email to the station fan database, which I still had access to, letting them know about the scam contest they were all hoping to win in a yet-to-be-held drawing. I then received a call from the station manager telling me my severance offer was being rescinded, or about $600. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't just work for one station. There were two, a 70s, 80s, 90s adult contemporary station and a news station that the company was in the process of selling. So I fired up a web browser to fcc.gov and blew the big old whistle on their scam contest practices. Boom. FCC investigation commences, the sale is put on hold, and they have to reduce the asking price by a full $1 million before the sale goes through. Kiss my butt, Beasley Broadcasting and Gary the Bagel Guy. The sheer stupidity here blows my mind. WTF did they expect to happen? Hey, you know that guy whose job we screwed over so you could bang an intern? The guy whose job it was to make sure we don't get fined for noncompliance? You don't think he might, I don't know, legally retaliate by reporting us to the FCC, right? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.